Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jess Cannell, and if you're new, then welcome. I'd like to earn your subscription today. We are working through Melania Trump's autobiography, released in 2024, called Melania. I've really been enjoying this series, and I hope you have too. I think Melania is an interesting person who has lived quite a number of kind of epochs of her life. Childhood in Sevnija, the European modeling years, the New York modeling years, where she was continuing each of those, she was continuing some of the practices from one or more previous epochs. Then she's in the dating Donald world, which we've been through. And now she's gone through marriage and business and adjusting to a blended family and is in a totally different epoch. And with this epoch, we get a totally different reaction from the world and even from their friends. Now she's taken us right up into the time when he is president-elect, and she's beginning to make some decisions as First Lady-elect. So let's get into today's reading. Chapter 10, My Husband, the President. On the morning of January 19th, we arrived at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. A waiting motorcade took us to the Capitol. The following day at noon would mark the official beginning of Donald's presidency and my tenure as First Lady. The city hummed with anticipation. Donald headed off to a leadership luncheon while Barron and I went to Blair House, the president's guest house. Tradition dictates that our entire family would lodge there for one night. That's interesting. You think about all the meetings and events and galas and new people you'd have to meet and begin to understand. And I think we could forget this kind of tradition that would force you to be in a new place, but just for one night on your perhaps most important night before everything is literally going to change in your life. It's just funny to think of powerful people who are still being dictated to by tradition, don't you think? While Donald aimed to disrupt certain Washington conventions, we held a deep reverence for presidential traditions like this stay in Blair House. It was a privilege to uphold these customs. Our day was filled with ceremonial duties. I stood by my husband's side and held his hand during a solemn wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. As the sun began to set, Donald and I descended the grand steps of the Lincoln Memorial, where he gave a speech. His voice carried across the square, inspiring the crowd with his words of promise and inspiration. Again, y'all, I'm trying not to do this all the time, but there are many sentences that I read here that sound like someone who is mature and singular in her personality and yet does not speak English with a native English tongue. I don't think this was ghostwritten, y'all. I hope I'm not hammering that too much for y'all. I see it all through the pages, and I don't mention it, but about 20% of the time that I see it. So there's that example. When my alarm chimed on January 20th, I noticed that the sun had not risen yet. The morning at Blair House was a whirlwind of activity as our family prepared for the long day ahead. The rooms had all been assigned beforehand to each set of people and their families. Remember, he has several different adult children that each had families. There's a picture of them that day, and it's quite a crowd. Every room was filled with excitement as we readied ourselves for the festivities. There had been a lot of speculation about my outfit. I knew all eyes would be on me as I stepped out on this historic day. The dress would be captured in photos that would be recorded in history. I had chosen a stunning blue ensemble designed for me by the great American fashion designer Ralph Lauren. A mock turtleneck dress with a matching cashmere jacket and long blue gloves. My high-heeled Manolo Blahnik pumps matched the light blue color of the outfit. Do you guys remember that day? I remember gasping a little bit when I saw her. I was like, oh, that is the perfect color. It's subdued version of a patriotic color, right? And it's with an American designer. She knows tons of European designers. She's had them not only dress her for the runway and for commercial work, but as just the wife of a very rich man, she had dressed with the best. So it was a particular nod to America for her to choose a solid, classic American designer, and the color she chose was just perfect. There she is. Look at that beautiful blue. It's a really lovely color, and I think even this photo doesn't do it justice. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The day began with a prayer service at St. John's Episcopal Church. Following this, we were chauffeured in the presidential limo known as the Beast to the White House, where we were greeted by the Obamas on the first steps. Barack congratulated Donald, and I presented Michelle with a robin's egg blue Tiffany & Company box containing a silver picture frame. This gesture was a nod to tradition, as she had gifted Laura Bush a pen and journal on a previous occasion. We posed for photographs. As we departed for the inauguration ceremony, Donald and Barack rode in the presidential Beast, while Michelle and I followed in a second limousine. Our conversation during the ride was pleasant and lighthearted. Once we arrived at the Capitol, a Marine in full dress regalia guided me onto the inaugural platform, where Barron and my beloved mother and father eagerly awaited. Well, I didn't plan on sharing this with y'all, but I have something exciting coming up this week. And by the time you view this, I will have already enjoyed it. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it. I'm going to get to be with my Marine in full dress regalia. He has invited me to the Marine Ball. And so I get to go. I haven't done anything like this really ever, but I was trying to think of when was the last time I dressed up as much as I'm going to dress up on this week. And I think the last time must have been my wedding. So I have that coming up. But to see Marines in their full dress blues really is lovely. It's quite a sight with their white hat, and everything on their uniform is just so. And I can imagine that, you know, the Marines that get honored for a situation like this are probably decorated with plenty of ribbons, and all of those details would make a day like this feel even more luxe, if you can imagine, as you're just kind of making your way through. But even the people who are just assigned to walk you up the steps or whatever are just outfitted beyond what you normally would see. Barron and my beloved mother and father eagerly awaited me on the inaugural platform. As I gazed out at the vast sea of distinguished individuals, surrounded by thousands of people, I felt a surge of pride and gratitude, while also acknowledging the weight of the moment. As Chief Justice John Roberts prepared to swear in Donald, I stood next to my husband holding two historic Bibles. Y'all listen to this. One was given to Donald by his mother when he was a boy. The other used by President Abraham Lincoln at his first inauguration. I'm going to find a photo and just bring this up for you guys, but one of the things that's neat about the First Family is that you can choose things like this. Historic desks, historic paintings, and artworks to have in the Oval Office or displayed in the White House at various times. And I just think that would be such a neat perk of, you've already got this massive influence, but it would be really fun for the First Lady to begin to think in antiquities, but for him to choose his own family Bible and then Lincoln's Bible. Quite fantastic, I think. Donald raised his right hand, placing his left on the Bibles, and he took the oath of office. My husband, the president. Following the speech, there was a benediction, a stirring national anthem performance, and a ride to the east side of the Capitol for the outgoing president's departure ceremony. So that's one of the interesting things about this day, especially those of you who are joining us from other countries. We are about to see all this again, so this is wonderful timing to just refresh ourselves on what happens on this day. But one of the crazy things that happens is one entire family, or even just a couple who has resided in a place for 4 years, which all of us know, good grief, the way that things can accumulate and stuff gets stashed here and there. And, you got to make sure you check every drawer, every cabinet, and imagine in a place like the White House. So that whole family has to have all of their things ready to go. And they sleep there right up until this day. And also this family who has packed up everything from here, has slept here, now on this day and moving forward, they're going to be sleeping in this historic White House. It's kind of crazy. At this point, Barack and Michelle not only would be feeling, of course, political things. I'm sure there are political feelings on any side when there is a new president being installed. No matter how much you might respect them, you're going to have those differences, and even when it's the same party. Like, we haven't had that happen in a while, but Reagan to Bush was an example of that, where Reagan had been president for 8 years, and then George H.W. Bush Sr., we sometimes call him, or Poppy, he took office in 88 to 92. And even that passing, there was bad blood between these two camps. Whoever has served in the vice presidency has often been overlooked. There's resentments that build up between the two camps of president and vice president. We're hearing ramblings of that. Now, I'll let you know, I'm actually recording this on Election Day, so I have no idea who will have won by the time you see this, but we are hearing in the last 3 weeks in particular, but really since June, when they made the transition from, no, Biden's our candidate, he's our man, we're going with him, to he's going to have to make that decision. He's going to have to be the one to make that decision. Nancy Pelosi said that about 10 times. To him resigning, to Kamala being granted that position by the Democrat Party very quickly, very hastily. There is bad blood between those two camps, no doubt about it. Multiple times this summer, and especially this last month, there have been instances where she is doing something significant. And for example, one of them was Biden, who hadn't given a press conference in years, all of a sudden heads to the White House briefing room and has a press conference. It's stunning. Clearly taking some of that energy and attention, and no doubt there is bad blood between presidents who are outgoing and even their vice president, but even more so if it's opposite parties. But besides all of that Barack and Michelle may have been feeling in this moment, you can just imagine the things that they would be feeling as humans of 8 years of your life. Their own epoch is closing, and the emotions you would feel, the sadness, and perhaps regrets of things you didn't get done, maybe regrets of how things turned out that you didn't expect. You tried to push things this way in this legislative agenda or with this particular issue, and you didn't quite achieve what you'd hoped. And then maybe some celebrations of what you did accomplish. But whatever you didn't get done or did get done, it's done. Your 8 years is completed. And you've got all the additional overlayer of stress of just moving, which is its own horrid experience, right? So there is a lot going on. So just in this statement of the outgoing president's departure ceremony, it's just 4 words, but it contains so much that would be complicated and difficult for everyone involved. And you think about staffers who have loved one family, or maybe who have just served but had a bad relationship and are kind of looking forward to a different one. Whatever the case, it's a lot of change all at once. Very fascinating. So it's interesting. Before the festivities start, we go ahead and say our goodbyes to the former president. Whoever that is, that is gotten out of the way so that then the rest of the day's events can go on and celebration can happen. And like we talked about, people who potentially have bad blood or are of different parties, or even just all the outlying things of moving, that doesn't have to put a damper on the fun things that are coming in the evening. We bid farewell to the former president and first lady beside the military helicopter that would take them to Joint Base Andrews, waving as they flew away. Next, we had lunch in the Capitol's National Statuary Hall, where Donald asked everyone to give Hillary Clinton a standing ovation. The parade was a grand display. While we mostly rode in the armored limo, we followed tradition by stepping out twice to walk up Pennsylvania Avenue and engage with the enthusiastic crowd. I remember this happening. I don't know if you do, but this was the first look that America got at who actually was in his family. I'll keep my personal politics out of it, but in 2016, I had not followed Trump very closely at all as a personal figure. I did not know even who was in his family. I knew he had a young son, and I knew about Ivanka, but I couldn't remember the people in the middle. And so this was our first look between Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, Tiffany Trump, and then Barron. Barron was 10. Tiffany, I believe, was a young woman at this point, maybe early 20s. And I don't believe she was married yet. And then the older three each had their own families. And so we're seeing this man that we've known as a real estate magnate, then as a television show program, but this was our first whole look as a country at this man, his different families that he had created with 3 different wives. I was kind of struck as I watched, because I'm interested in these kinds of things. I'm interested in relationship dynamics. And I was struck by the way that they're all in there together. They're walking together, talking, laughing. It didn't seem like bad blood. They all seemed to delight in things that Barron was doing. They all were engaged with their father and with Melania. I didn't see terrible bad blood and caustic behavior. Now, it's possible for anyone to fake. So, that's possible. But that's what struck me that day, is that, okay, he has these particular children, he has grandchildren, which I don't really think about, but that would be an amazing position to be in, to have your grandpa be the president and be a part of a day like this. But yeah, they're there, they're engaged with the crowd. I remember watching them take these walks on Pennsylvania Avenue. It was a big day. It was very new and fresh. Democrats were, of course, not pleased that he was president, but a lot of Republicans were also unsure about who he would be. And so there was something that just felt different about this day than a normal presidential inauguration day, because neither party really knew what this non-political man was going to bring to office. We proceeded to prepare for the evening's festivities, 3 inaugural balls. I then changed into my evening gown for the occasion. In the weeks leading up to the inauguration, I had found myself in a whirlwind of events and realized at some point that she had perhaps waited too long to arrange a designer to help her for the perfect gown for the inauguration. Then a dear friend from Belgium told me that I needed to meet the talented Hervé Pierre. Hervé has an impressive background, having worked with haute couture fashion houses such as Christian Dior, Pierre Balmain, Oscar de la Renta, and Carolyn Herrera. After our first meeting on January 3rd, I was convinced that we were destined to create something stunning for the upcoming inaugural ball. We discussed my vision for a unique off-white, off-the-shoulder gown. The timeline was tight, but he was eager to collaborate. Interestingly, as I thought back to different first ladies that I can remember, one of the things that strikes me as different about this process is that she has worked in the fashion world. A lot of first ladies, I'm thinking back from my memory, Michelle Obama, Laura Bush, and Hillary Clinton. To my knowledge, they all wore rather traditional, expected gowns. Perhaps a sweeping gold or navy or that sort of thing. I believe Laura Bush wore a red gown. Beautiful gowns. They looked lovely, of course, and fantastic, as you would. But they looked like typical red carpet fare. And it's interesting to get this look What she ended up wearing is not crazy designed, but it is a little different. First, I'll show you the actual design work that he came up with. So that was the design. And even the form-fitting nature, I think most First Ladies have opted for a full skirt. And so even that design is very interesting. It showcases Melania's sleek form. But here is what it looked like in the long run. There it is, her gown. Very different. I think I probably have a pretty unrefined eye for fashion. And so I'm kind of wowed by the full skirt, amazing moment. To me, I can imagine you never wear a dress like that if you're a normal person. You just, and she is not just a normal person who has only interacted in normal life. I mean, I'm feeling it right now that, I've got a gown. It's not a full skirt. It's just a gown. But that feeling of having something special to wear, I think it's really interesting for her to come at this with her fashion eye. After several iterations, we settled on a design that was both modern and elegant. Here's her description of the dress. A sleeveless, vanilla-colored gown with a distinctive arch across the torso, a high slit, and a striking red silk belt. Hervé's attention to detail and creative flair truly brought my vision to life, and I was thrilled with the final result. Hervé personally greeted me at the White House to ensure that the dress was flawless. It was indeed perfect, and I was fully prepared for the ball. In my couture gown, I danced with my husband to the timeless melody of Frank Sinatra's iconic My Way at the Liberty Ball and the Freedom Ball. As Donald and I stepped into our new home, the White House, very late, the chief usher guided us through the corridors and into the residence, where I immediately kicked off my high-heeled stilettos. I realized the importance of a good night's rest. Tomorrow's schedule promised to be just as demanding as today's. I think it's really interesting the way that self-care comes into a moment like this for her, that she's that disciplined to think, I've got to get a good night's rest. There's a lot to do tomorrow. And I think a lot of us might feel that, but I don't know about you, I would feel fluttering in my stomach, and I would just want to kick off my heels. And then since I had permission, I would just want to run through some of the rooms and take a look. This is actually our home. This is crazy. She says, truthfully, the White House felt more like a hotel than a home that first night. The Obamas had just moved out, and our entire family was staying through the weekend. Sleeping in the White House that first night seemed like a perfect way to end the day, almost too remarkable to believe. On Saturday, January 21st, Donald and I attended the National Prayer Service. Later in the evening, the whole family gathered for a dinner in the state dining room. My parents, along with all of Donald's children and grandchildren, were present. The next day, January 22nd, marked our 12th wedding anniversary. So much had happened in those 12 years, and it felt right to celebrate everything at once. The inauguration, my husband as president, our marriage, our new home, and our new lives. This was the beginning of a new adventure, and we were thrilled to embark on it together. Chapter 11, in the White House. When Donald won, someone remarked to me that being First Lady is often referred to as the hardest volunteer job in America. It is a role that is undefined, unpaid, highly visible, and subject to relentless scrutiny. Yeah, it is. That's interesting. And most First Ladies get given a berth of respect and honor for that reason, because it is a position. I think Hillary Clinton was the first one that brought this to our modern understanding, but it's a position that expects a lot of you that, depending on your personality, you may or may not have interest in. And yes, you can bring whoever you are to the table, and yet you are being brought along as a spouse in a way that's distinct from any other role. Even a CEO's wife who might have to occasionally plan the annual Christmas party or something, or host, big wigs. This is very different. This is a high level of expectation, and we're going to start to see what she decided to bring to that role. I believe that this position also presents power and ample opportunities for making a positive impact. I was committed to using my platform for the greater good. The First Lady oversees approximately 100 White House staff, including housekeepers, plumbers, engineers, chefs, florists, and carpenters. She plans and hosts all annual White House events, such as the Easter egg roll, Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, and visits from foreign dignitaries. She often travels with the president, which involves meticulous planning. There are also unforeseen events, national tragedies, natural disasters, and global incidents that require immediate and compassionate responses. That would be quite difficult. During the first half of 2017, I split my time between New York, Washington, and Mar-a-Lago, managing my duties as First Lady and supporting my husband's administration. From waking Barron up in the morning to attending rallies, meeting with foreign leaders, every moment was filled with purpose and excitement. So this is something interesting and unique about them, and I'm not sure what previous families have done. She opted to allow Barron to remain in his school through the remainder of that school year. And so they did not move until the summer. So I remember speculation about that being weird. Was there problems in their marriage? Was she protesting and thought she was too good for the White House? But given what we know about her and her desire to plan and have things orderly and provide a very stable and good foundation for Barron, her decision makes sense to me now. I remember thinking that's a little odd. I mean, you only get 4 years and this is a once in a lifetime sort of thing, but it's just that it's once in a lifetime and that she has one lifetime to get Barron's childhood right. And she has prioritized that. And so it makes sense that in this decision, she would think, we're going to give it a little bit of time before we move. Even before my move to Washington, I began establishing my office as the First Lady. Being an outsider, I had to assert myself gently and work with trusted individuals. We encountered obstacles in securing the necessary support and resources as competition within the team was evident. Previous First Ladies' offices had had as many as 23 staff. I never had more than 12 on my team. Large enough to do everything I wanted to do, but small enough to stay responsive, nimble, and effective. We got off to a busy start. In early February, I attended an American Red Cross event. Shortly after, Donald and I hosted Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and his wife Aki. I hope I'm saying those names right. I had the pleasure of connecting with Aki and found her company delightful. In preparation for our move to Washington, D.C., I had been researching schools for Barron and making arrangements to ensure the White House felt like a comfortable and welcoming home for our family. My priority was to create a sense of stability and familiarity for Barron. My plans to begin preparing the residence before the inauguration were unfortunately disrupted by protocols and politics. And I was only able to begin renovations after the inauguration once we were already in the White House. The previous 3 weeks would have been crucial for taking measurements, gathering plans, and starting preparations, but they didn't receive the response. Each first family has the opportunity to decorate and personalize certain rooms on the residential floors of the White House. They can choose furniture from a catalog provided by the White House warehouse, bring their own items from home, or purchase new furniture using approved funds. This allows the first family to create a comfortable and welcoming living space while respecting the historical significance of the White House. It's neat to get this behind-the-scenes look, I think, at what happens. With the expertise of talented New York-based interior designer Tom Canalicum, the project was a success. With her knowledge in history and preservation, her name is T-H-A-M. So I believe I'm saying that right, Tom. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong. I knew she would be the perfect partner with her knowledge in history and preservation. I planned to gradually expand my renovating and redecorating efforts throughout the White House. We initially focused on redecorating a dozen rooms in the private residence. A dozen rooms, you guys. Do we have a dozen rooms in our house? Maybe we do. I don't think we do, actually. What about you? A dozen rooms. He says we began there with a dozen rooms. We initially focused on redecorating a dozen rooms in the private residence as the existing style was outdated or not to my taste. Barron's room was a priority. He was the first young boy to live in the White House since John Kennedy Jr. And the children's bedrooms had been decorated for girls for 60 years. Yeah, it had only been girls. There was Amy Carter, the Bush twins, but they were already graduated. I think that Patricia Nixon maybe, and then the Obama girls. So yeah, it was only girls. It was important to create a space that suited Barron's interest. We decorated his room together and brought familiar items from New York to make him feel more comfortable. In May, we hosted his New York classmates for a visit. Barron was excited and proud to show his friends where he would be living. He enjoyed the White House and was looking forward to calling it home. I think that's fascinating. That would be really fun for him to be able to go from the campaign, Dad's elected, finish out my school year, get comfortable with the idea, bring my buddies to kind of close out that season of my life before moving into the White House. I think that does make sense that she thought that that would be good for him. The transition on June 11th, 2017 to the White House was a momentous occasion for our family. It was a day filled with excitement. The exceptional staff made us feel right at home, and by the time we settled in, everything felt in place. I reassured Barron that our family would make the White House our home and face the challenges together as a family. I admired his resilience, as moving to a new house in a new city can be tough for anyone, let alone a sixth grader. The limitations of being constantly under Secret Service protection and living in the public eye made everyday activities more complicated. We were prepared for the increased public attention on Barron's life, knowing that being the president's son brought a whole new level of scrutiny. The summer move facilitated a smoother adjustment for us. With the school year over and Barron occupied with soccer camp, we had the opportunity to settle in before the start of the new school year in September. The timing felt right, and we were all looking forward to serving together. Let's stop there. I think that's good. So in this reading, we have gotten to see the whole inauguration day, the presidential transition process that's just so fascinating, and then her particular approach to things like her gown and overseeing Barron's transition. That really would be a big job, and I think you would feel the weight of it as a mother to not mess that up. And, you know, we've seen her be careful in certain aspects of that in the past. And since they've only ever lived in one place as a family, there in Trump Tower, it would feel momentous to make this sudden transition amidst all the other things that needed to happen. So I actually can see how this was a good decision for them. What about you? Next time we're going to be getting into her First Lady preservation projects and some of the early events like her Be Best initiative. So I hope you'll come back for that. I hope you're enjoying this. Let me know in the comments which part stood out to you, what you think about her decision making, the fashion element of the inaugural ball, whatever stood out to you, let me know in the comments. I love interacting with you guys there. I hope you have a great day. Bye.